What is a compromise? Before we go farther, we must get a clear idea of the meaning of the word compromise. Otherwise, every debate on it will be completely without aim and without result, because everyone will have in mind something different, and consequently, no one will meet the arguments of another. If compromise is understood as a concession of theory to practice, then our entire life and activity is a compromise. And all human history, and the history of the race from the life of the individual up to that of nations and of mankind, is an endless, unbroken chain of compromises. That conception of history, according to which tabula rasa, i.e. a clean sweep, is temporarily made and must be made in order to start a new administration and system free from the old, is in the highest degree unscientific and stands in the most direct contradiction to experience. The clean sweep theory is a spook, which exists today only in the heads of police politicians who accuse us of wanting to ruinate everything that does not fit into our scheme. These gentlemen thereby give judgment against themselves, for they think they are the ones who possess this magical power of being able to ruinate anything and everything which time's eternal loom has woven and is weaving, if perchance it has been done without first getting a permit from the chief of police. The framers of the anti-socialist law and penitentiary law display by their foolish activity only their bottomless ignorance. The organic laws, according to which political and social development goes on, cannot be arbitrarily changed or nullified, just as little as this can be done with the laws under which an animal or a plant grows and develops. Whoever interferes there with violence can only disturb and destroy. This has always been the effect wrought by the police politicians. What these fuddlers, who call themselves statesmen, say against us social democrats, namely, that we cannot create anything but only destroy, is simply the reflection of their own actions and doings. There is not among the innumerable sins and vices of which they accuse us a single one which they have not taken from themselves. To add one new example to the old ones, I will simply refer to the charge which has been stereotyped for 20 years, namely, that the social democracy has for its object a proletarian dictatorship. The truth is that since the Battle of June at Paris, that is, for 51 years, we have actually had on the continent of Europe the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie, a dictatorship which has been exercised with fire and sword against the working class, which, after the Battle of June, brought us the horrible butcheries of the Commune and hundreds of smaller butcheries of laborers. A dictatorship which extends to the disfranchisement of the working class and deprives the proletariat not only of political rights, but also of simple legal rights. A dictatorship which has expressed itself in dozens of exceptional laws and force laws, and which we Germans have to thank for the anti-socialist law, the penitentiary bill, and class law decrees, such as the Loeb Tau judgment and the perjury trial at Essen. And if King Sturm, who is now king in the realm of social reform, should accomplish his purpose of annihilating every organization of working men, what, in comparison with such a dictatorship, would be the dictatorship of a Marius, or a Sulla, or of the French Convention of 1792 to 1794? The political power which the social democracy aims at, and which it will win, no matter what its enemies may do, has not for its object the establishment of a dictatorship of the proletariat, but the suppression of the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie. Just as the class struggle which the proletariat carries on is only a counter-struggle in self-defense, to resist the class struggle of the bourgeoisie against the proletariat. And the end of this struggle, by the victory of the proletariat, will be the abolition of the class struggle in every form. We Social Democrats know that the laws according to which political and social evolution goes on can no more be changed or stopped by us than by the authorities of capitalistic society. We know that we can no more introduce at will socialistic production and a socialist form of society than the German Kaiser 9 years ago could carry out his February proclamations against the representatives of the capitalistic class struggle. Therefore, we were able to watch with smiling indifference the attempt of our opponents to crush the labor movement by force. We were, and still are, sure of our success, as sure as of the solution of a mathematical problem. But we know also that the shifting of relations, though it goes on unceasingly, yet goes on gradually, because it is an organic movement, and it goes on, too, without destruction of the existing relations. The removal of the dead is not destruction. The destruction of the existing, of the living, is in general impossible. We saw that plainly in the French Revolution, which was probably the best planned and most energetically carried out of all political upheavals. But nevertheless, after the golden period of ideological groping around and of fantastic and utopian illusions was past, it was compelled to take things as they were and fit the new onto the old. In the first rush, it may be possible occasionally to crowd out the living, but history teaches us that the most revolutionary and despotic governments were finally compelled by the logic of facts to yield and to recognize, perhaps, in another form, that which was unnaturally and mechanically abolished. In short, viewed historically, the present is, as a rule, a compromise between the past and the future. Therefore, to reject a compromise in this sense would be unscientific folly. And practical folly it would be for a political party to fail to draw advantages out of the opportunities of political life and utilize for itself the quarrels of the different opposing parties. Prudence demands this. Principles do not come into the question. no obligations are assumed, and not to do what prudence demands would be stupidity. That we social democrats in the Reichstag sometimes on a socio-political question vote with the conservatives for the government, and on political and commercial questions sometimes vote with the radicals against the government, that is a common requirement of political warfare. Though it is undoubtedly a compromise between theory and practice, it has nothing at all in common with the compromises against which the party has repeatedly declared itself distinctly and expressly. What the party had in mind and what it, by formal resolutions, made the duty of the members was the avoidance of alliances, agreements, arrangements, contracts, or whatever they might be called, which would involve a surrender of principles, or in general, a change in the relation of our party towards the bourgeois parties in a manner injurious to us. This last point must be especially emphasized because the question hinges principally on this. In the debate on taking part in the Prussian legislative elections, the question at issue was exclusively this last point, for none of those who advocated participation had the slightest idea of sacrificing party principles in an alliance with the Progressive Party, though it must not be overlooked that questions of tactics very easily shift into questions of principle. Socialism and ethics. Pity for poverty, enthusiasm for equality and freedom, recognition of social injustice, and a desire to remove it is not socialism. Condemnation of wealth and respect for poverty, such as we find in Christianity and other religions, is not socialism. The communism of early times, as it was before the existence of private property, and as it has at all times and among all peoples been the elusive dream of some enthusiasts, is not socialism. The forcible equalization advocated by the followers of Babeuf, the so-called equalitarians, is not socialism. In all appearances, there is lacking the real foundation of capitalist society with its class antagonisms. Modern socialism is the child of capitalist society and its class antagonisms. Without these, it could not be. Socialism and ethics are two separate things. This fact must be kept in mind. Whoever conceives of socialism in the sense of a sentimental, philanthropic, striving after human equality, with no idea of the existence of capitalist society, is no socialist in the sense of the class struggle, without which modern socialism is unthinkable. To be sure, Bernstein is nominally for the class struggle, in the same manner as the Hessian peasant is for the Republic and the Grand Duke. Whoever has come to a full consciousness of the nature of capitalist society and the foundation of modern socialism knows also that a socialist movement that leaves the basis of the class struggle may be anything else, but it is not socialism. The foundation of the class struggle, which Marx, and this is his immortal service, has given to the modern labor movement, is the main point of attack in the battle which the bourgeois political economy is waging with socialism. The political economists deny the class struggle and would make of the labor movement only a part of the bourgeois party movements. and the social democracy only a division of the bourgeois democracy. The bourgeois political economy and politics direct all their exertions against the class character of the modern labor movement. If it were possible to create a breach in this bulwark, in this citadel of the social democracy, then the social democracy is conquered, and the proletariat thrown back under the dominion of capitalistic society. However small such a breach may be in the beginning, the enemy has the power to widen it and the certainty of final victory. And the enemy is most dangerous when he comes as a friend to the fortress, when he slinks in under the cover of friendship and is recognized as a friend and comrade. The enemy who comes to us with open visor we face with a smile. To set our foot upon his neck is mere play for us. The stupidly brutal acts of violence of police politicians, the outrages of anti-socialist laws, the anti-revolution laws, penitentiary bills, these only arouse feelings of pitying contempt. The enemy, however, that reaches out the hand to us for a political alliance and intrudes himself upon us as a friend and brother, him and him alone have we to fear. Our fortress can withstand every assault. It cannot be stormed nor taken from us by siege. It can only fall when we ourselves open the doors to the enemy and take him into our ranks as a fellow comrade. Growing out of the class struggle, our party rests upon the class struggle as a condition of its existence. Through and with that struggle, the party is unconquerable. Without it, the party is lost, for it will have lost the source of its strength. Whoever fails to understand this, or thinks that the class struggle is a dead issue, or that class antagonisms are gradually being effaced, stands upon the basis of bourgeois philosophy. The present discussion over tactics in relation to participation in the elections to the Prussian legislature has been compared to the discussion which took place among the Social Democratic members of the Reichstag in the middle of the 80s concerning the steamship subsidy. If one examines the matter only superficially, the comparison appears strikingly close, but ceases to be so as soon as the kernel of the question is reached. At that time, we were concerned with the application of universally recognized principles to a concrete case. That the Social Democratic faction in the Reichstag was interested in the furtherance of German shipping and commercial interests was as universally admitted as that they were opposed to the colonial policy and all other imperialistic reactionary tendencies. The only question was whether the subsidy was primarily in the interests of the German commercial interests, which were national in their character, or whether it was a part of colonial politics that served only the private interests of reactionary individuals at the expense of the public. No one suggested at that time to change the old tactics or alter the course of the party. The present discussion, however, is concerned with the question of a complete change of the old tactics and aims. A change of tactics that would mean a change in the character of the party. It turns upon the question of the retention or abandonment of the class struggle standpoint, which distinguishes us from all bourgeois parties. In short, it involves a decisive step upon which depends whether we shall remain a socialist party or whether we shall bridge over the Rubicon of the class struggle and become the left wing of the bourgeois democracy. Theoretical differences of opinion, not material. Tactical is material. Diversity of opinions on theoretical points is never dangerous to the party. There are for us no bounds to criticism, and however great our respect may be for the founders and pioneers of our party, we recognize no infallibility, and no other authority than science, whose sphere is ever widening and continually proves what it previously held as truths to be errors, destroys the old decayed foundations and creates new ones, does not stand still for an instant, but in perpetual advance moves remorselessly over every dogmatic belief. At the Union Convention held at Gotha 24 years ago, I said, "We recognize no infallible pope, not even a literary one." And when, in 1891, in Erfurt, I explained and advocated the newly drafted platform, which was unanimously adopted, I declared that just because our program was a scientific one, it must be constantly changed at minor points to meet the continuous advance of science. And I maintain that no man, Marx, in spite of his comprehensive and deep intellect, as little as any other, can bring science to final perfection. And this position is for everyone who understands the nature of science a foregone conclusion. No socialist, therefore, has the right to condemn attacks on the theoretical ideas of the Marxian teachings, or to excommunicate anyone from the party because of such attacks. But it is wholly different when such attacks imply a complete overturning of our whole conception of society, as, for example, is the case with Bernstein. Then vigorous defense is in order. Far more dangerous than theoretical assaults are practical disavowals of our principles. Theoretical discussions interest only a comparatively small portion of our membership, whereas practical disavowal of principles and tactical offenses against the party program touch every party comrade and arouse the attention of every party comrade. And when they are not quickly checked and corrected, they bring confusion into the whole party. I do not believe I shall be disputed by anyone who is familiar with the circumstances and with the party when I say that the masses within the party care little for Bernstein's writing. They only find sympathy among those who have formerly held similar views, and they arouse a sensation only among our opponents who wish to see fulfilled their old hopes of a split in the party, or to see the whole social democracy go over with drums beating into the bourgeois camp. I will wager that not 10,000 of our comrades have ever read Bernstein's book, and I am far from considering it as a reproach to the party that they show no inclination to busy themselves once more with the underbrush that the founders of socialism, more than a generation ago, yes, in some cases more than 2 generations ago, hewed down in clearing the way for socialism. One might just as well accuse our comrades of being unscientific because they no longer read the antediluvian writings of Schultz Delitzsch that may be lying around somewhere in country villages as dust-covered and shop-worn goods. Look at the list who have commented on Bernstein's book, there is not a single laborer among them. It is only those comrades whose professional duty it is to read and discuss such writings. With what interest, on the contrary, the whole party followed the question of participation in the Prussian legislative elections or the election alliance in Bavaria. How lively was the discussion! This lively interest showed the maturity of the party. We are past the stage of theoretical debates about platforms. The establishment, elaboration, and clarifying of our program we leave to science, which in our present society is the business of only a few. But the practical application of our program and the tactics of the party are the business of all. Here all work together. The supreme importance of tactics and the necessity of maintaining its class struggle character is something the party has been well conscious of from the beginning. If we read the proceedings of the early conventions held in the 70s, we find that in all questions of tactics, the thought was continually kept in the foreground that the party must be kept clean from all mixture with all other parties, every one of which, no matter how much they differed from each other, or how furiously they fought among themselves, stood upon the ground of bourgeois society as a common basis. This separation of the social democracy from all other parties, this essential difference, which silly opponents take as a reason or pretext for declaring us political outlaws, is our pride and our strength. In the Hamburg Convention, where, under the influence of a series of confusing circumstances, the mass of the delegates appeared decided to break with the old tactics and traditions, the party still recovered itself at the last moment before the leap into the dark and declared itself by an overwhelming majority as opposed to every compromise. And this resolution has remained in force to the present day. If 2 or 3 election districts have been induced to enter into an alliance with a bourgeois party, this was done upon their own responsibility and in undoubted violation of the Hamburg Resolution, which, let me repeat, was not repealed by the Stuttgart Resolution. On the other hand, the Berlin comrades, who have been complained of by the friends of compromise as violators of the Hamburg Resolution, have conscientiously followed the spirit and letter of it, and by their decisive stand, maintained the authority of the Supreme Party Council and performed a service to the party. The advocates of compromise tactics overestimate the value of parliamentary activity and parliamentary representation. Not that I do not recognize the enormous value of parliamentary activity, but this is not an end, but only a means to an end. Our power is not measured by the number of representatives, but by the total number of votes that are behind us. It is a bourgeois sentiment to overvalue the possession of representatives. In representation, as in money, there is power over others. Whoever places the purity and the greatness of our party above all else, for him, representatives have value only insofar as they serve to give expression to the power and extent of social democracy. What do 10, what do 100 representatives signify when our escutcheon has lost its gloss through their acquisition? The value of a representative is small, but the value of the integrity of our party is immeasurable. In it rests our strength